journeys are really important. I'd love to see a show of hands of who uses customer journeys. Erica, Christopher, Ashley. Okay, everybody's using journeys. So let's do another one. For whom are journeys the essential connective tissue with others outside of our own department, others outside of our own purview or reporting line, right? So is it the essential thing to connect us with others? If yes, raise your hand. If no or uncertain, don't. Okay.
I think the reason I can raise my hand confidently is because I'm a consultant. So I'm saying what it should be and what I try to endorse. But
Okay.
whether
So you in your world, Naz, the journey map is that shared lingua franca. Ashley, you were saying you were talking about the journey map being a connective tissue before. So I'm curious about what else is better than the journey map for helping to connect those teams.
Well, I give the I don't know if I would say, I think I may be thinking of it too literally, as in like, this is the artifact where we all come to the table and we all have an assigned portion of the journey and we've, carried it about. And that's all fine and dandy as a model, but we all know that that's not how the real world works. Yeah. And so there's plenty of times where, just thinking about, again, Naz talking about clicks or time to answer versus the quality of answer. We get feedback all the time about people, I love this thing, do it for everyone. And then of course there's someone else sitting there saying, I hate this thing. Why does it exist? And we're like, it's the exact same thing. So I would say that some of the other elements are things like, we use what we call CSAT, so customer satisfaction, but it's not a lot of companies use that basically by saying like, oh yes, I take a score, take a satisfaction score at the end and be like, check the box. Or they look at things, obviously I'm in SaaS, so I'm kind of highly biased toward those mindsets and metrics, but things like churn. Oh, customers must be satisfied if they're not churning. Are they? Have you asked them? Have you talked to them? So I think, we have research and insights team, for example, that helps us do, big, broad focus groups or research across things like accessibility, for example. So the only reason I say that the journey map is not kind of the one thing to rule them all is that I think there's other artifacts or other processes that contribute to a journey map, but that are a deeper dive, that really understanding who that customer is, how they think, what their pain points are, what they're doing, not just how they got there, is huge. And so it may be a little bit of semantics for me to say, oh, it's not the journey map, it's actually customer interviews or looking at in-product analytics to be like, nobody uses this tab. We insist that they need this question, this information, but you'll notice that nobody actually goes to that. So maybe they don't. Again, that's part of the journey, but it's a different piece of that data or a different piece of that mindset. So maybe I'm just being pedantic.
No, this is good. I think journey maps is another thing we could do an entire hour on. I mean, seriously, and have an in-depth conversation. As Naz pointed out, not all journey maps are equal, and how they're used is variable. I have two other main topics I want to make sure we get to. One is about culture, and really another one is about common struggles. So we can help the audience with that. But I do want to make sure to give both Erica and Christopher a chance to talk about journey maps just a little bit. So knowing we've got a couple topics to get to with the shorter version, what's your take on journey maps, Erica?
I think our team is using them mostly to scope our work. So we know there's only so many hours in each day, so many hours in every month, and so many people in our team. So if we have our goals set by the quarter or by, we call it H1, H2, for the first half of the year, the second half of the fiscal year, we scope our focus on a certain chunk of the customer journey, and that helps us define success. Because we have all these different customers, like we've got entrepreneurs of one, and then we've got customers who are, the US government is one of our customers. Like we have to make sure that we're making our content great for those different customers for a chunk of the customer experience. And that's got a specific journey map associated with it.
And is that outside of the office group, shared outside of the office group, or is that journey map just within office?
There's overlap, and I think that's where we need to look at the overall experience. I mean, we've got Dynamics, we've got Office, we've got Teams, we've the whole, our customers use multiple products, and so we can't be tunnel visioned for our product that there's interactions, and that's where things get really complicated and turn into a big ball of wax as well. This customer has Teams, so that customer doesn't have Teams. We need to focus on what we can affect and improve. And it is super complicated. Makes your head explode thinking about all the different customers and different variations of the customer journey. And I think that's to your point of, what are you talking about customer journeys? We could talk for an hour about it, but we need to scope the work to make it manageable. And we know that we're not addressing every need in every customer situation, but we're doing our best.
That's great. Yeah. And I love that. Thank you. And I think doing our best with any of this stuff is always going to be the rule of the day. I mean, with journey maps, they're done so differently. I'd love to get Naz's take on that after Christopher. Christopher, can you give us just an update on digital at WHO for journey maps and how you kind of use them and your stance on them?
I mean, I think it really depends on the digital maturity of who you're talking to across the organization. And so, like in my team, we have a lot of very digitally savvy people. So we're basically using it to identify easy wins and doing SWOT analysis as to where we can make a big impact and make people's lives easier. Rest of the organization, while they're very talented medically, are not so talented digitally. The one big advance we've had recently is people used to think of the journey as, I need to be on the homepage. I must be on the homepage. I must only be on the homepage, and if I'm not on the homepage, I'm nowhere. And so finally, I don't know what happened, but after years, that's gone away. They're now thinking, oh, it'd be nice to be on a different channel. Oh, it'd be nice to be referred to by this group or that group. It's not really a journey map, but it's just the understanding, which is an advancement in the digital maturity, that it doesn't all happen in one place and that there is a journey. We're getting there. It's gonna take time. It's a culture struggle. And yeah, I mean, we're basically trying to inform and push other teams forward. I mean, the one really difficult part right now is the content team itself, the team I used to lead before COVID-19 or before I started doing this digital experience, because of COVID, has almost become just a content putter-upper team. And that's unfortunately a kind of a tragedy, because there's so much, they're just like, put it up, put it up, put it up. It's just boom, 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 boom. And so I'm trying to help the new manager. She comes from a journalistic background, so she can do it. I know she can do it. She's better than me at it. She's just gotten sucked into this, put it up, put it up. So I'm kind of giving her the advice, but I'm also kind of waiting for things to die down a bit, because we really need that second team to really take its place. And there's some good people in it who know what we're talking about, but they just don't have the bandwidth to. Because if you're struggling with bandwidth and you're a step or two behind everything, you don't have time to think about journey maps. You take a headline that's 7 or 8 lines long. I've seen that come up. 7, 8 line headline. Come on, that's impressive. We call Guinness Book if we want something here. I mean, and I'm not saying that it happens pervasively all the time, but it's one of the first things that goes when you're completely bombarded by urgencies and masses of content. And we were in this shift, and they never really got their ground rules in place. But I think we can get there. I think we're just around the corner from. We're all going to have our vaccines. Us in Europe, we're going to take longer because we take our time. And in the United States, you probably or pretty soon have them all. But once that all happens, we will move on to it, and it is an important part.
Does governance get lost with that speed as well as things like Journey Map too, or is it? I guess at the WHO, governance always it is still.
I mean, the easy way to answer that one is it depends, right? Okay. On some things, governance is there and strong, and on other things, governance has eroded because of the COVID-19, because things have to happen.
Yeah.
The people are looking how to cut the corners.
Yeah.
I mean, it really depends on, one of the tricky things is it depends on how high up people are pushing for that governance to cut the corner, because that really erodes governance, is when you have a very senior person saying, nope, exception. And then a week later, exception. That doesn't mean that governance is falling apart. It means that governance in certain areas is weaker. And when we go back to, well, there's never a steady situation in the World Health Organization. We often have an outbreak, but there are more calmer times. And I think when the calmer times are there, calmer heads will prevail. And already now I see that this discussions are starting to happen, like, hey, wait, why is there all this mess of different channels, different systems? Let's have that discussion. That's the first step. So we're having those first step conversations, and there are a lot of new people that came in. And so it's educating them, bringing them digitally up to level, or just bringing them into the level of how we do things in WHO. So it's a combination of things. It really does depend.
That's really
you win some, you lose some. We're trying to win more than we lose.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. We're working on these holistic transformations. And it's really hard to get the attention on a holistic transformation when you're in the middle of chaos. And so, but everybody still wants that conversation. It still moves forward, but it's like everybody waits for that bandwidth and that chance to breathe, and then these holistic things happen. Yeah, that's very good perspective. Naz, last word on journey maps.
Very quickly, I just wanted to slip in there that about this not all journey maps are equal thing, because I always find that in discussions, some people are thinking about kind of the customer journey, which I would often refer to almost, or I hear something which is synonymous with the customer life cycle, like the awareness, perception, education, etc., which are like the big stages of the buying cycle. And so when I answered your question earlier, I was referring to like a lower level of journey. So onboarding, or cross grading, or something like that, something a bit more like buy my mortgage, some more specific objective in a certain context, that kind of journey mapping. And because the big thing is too big to really be the asset the way that you were talking about. I think
that's very helpful. I think that distinction is an important one, because we're dealing with strategy that we then have to chunk into really kind of epics and journeys and stories, and all of that has to ladder up, to use Ashley's word, and ladder down kind of consistently in order to be a useful asset to create holistic outcomes.